Hi, Thea.
Hi.
You ready to learn a little bit about climate change and what we can do?
Yes.
Okay, let's work on it. Now, I'm promising it's going to end with some positive news. It's kind of scary stuff, but we can do this, all right? Okay, let's talk about it. I'm going to share my screen and show you. So, you know about the En-ROADS model, right? You remember this? Okay, so En-ROADS model was created by MIT just last year. They have something called Climate Interactive, which is their nonprofit groups that, like a good company that works to spread the word about climate change and what we can do. And this is a fun toy anybody can play with it. Just go to en-roads to check out. But what it does is it shows you what we can do to try to change climate change so it doesn't get so bad. So what we're looking at here on the right-hand side is temperature increases. Here we are, this is where we were 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. And here's where we are now at a little bit more than 1 degree centigrade. And then these dashed lines, you know what those are? Those are like where we have to stay below. So this is bad news because it says like that in 10 years, we're gonna go past that and keep on going past it. But the perfect scenario is if we stay below 1.5. But if we can't do that, we may be okay. If we go to 2, we'll still be bad. We'll lose like the ocean reefs and stuff like that. But maybe we'll be okay if we go to 2. But we really want to get to 1.5. So let's see how we can do it. This is where all of our energy comes from. The red line is oil, black line is coal, blue is natural gas, green is renewables, bioenergy, and nuclear. And then some kind of new technology would be new zero carbon technology, whatever that might be, something we haven't invented yet. So that's governed by all these things. We can slide these sliders back and forth or click on these little 3 buttons and you can do a deeper dive into what's going on, like more details. Okay, but let's just stay with the rough estimate, which is the sliders. Then we can change what we're thinking about transportation. We can either make it more energy efficient, use less energy, or change it to electrification of transportation, or the same thing with buildings and industries, either make it easier on the energy or electrify, or we can try to manipulate population or economic growth, which is kind of hard to manipulate, but as much as we can do. And then land and emissions use, either cutting down trees or methane leaks, which comes from cows and natural gas lines that have leaks and that kind of stuff. And then carbon removal, which is either naturally by planting trees, that's afforestation, making new forests, or technologically, which could be anything from, it could be from direct air capture, which is like a machine that will take air out of the atmosphere, or agricultural sequestration, which means putting it back on the farmer's soil, or mineralization, which any kinds of things, or we could bioengineer, we could create like special kinds of plants in the ocean that'll suck carbon up. All that's in there. Okay, so I move these levers around, you can see what happens to the temperature and you can see what happens to the energy. What do you want to see happen?
I was thinking about making our cars electric, because then we wouldn't be emitting CO2 from our cars.
That's right. Good idea. I love it. And we know in Maine, where we're from, most of our carbon dioxide emissions are coming from tailpipes from cars, right? So, right, we could do this. Now, all I'm doing here is I'm not really making the cars electric. I'm actually just giving people money to get electric cars. It's all from that perspective, from where money works, economics. So I'm going to grab this thing. What do you think is going to happen when I grab this? If I move it all the way over so more people will be able to afford electric vehicles.
Probably coal and oil will go down.
Oh, well, look at when I move this over, look what happens. Temperature went down a little bit, just a bit, from 3.6 to 3.5. But you can see what happened here. Your good things is that renewables went up. We like that, and oil went down, which is gas for your cars. But coal actually kept going up. It actually went up a little bit more. And you know why?
No.
For a lot of places around the world, this is a global model. This is the whole world. So when you for a lot of places, electricity is coming from coal and oil. I'm sorry, it's from coal and from coal. So electricity, when we're making more electric vehicles, it means that there's going to be more coal going into the system, which is the worst of all the fossil fuels. But it's still good. It's a little bit better, but we need to do something. We need to do something on top of that. I'm going to go back to the
Yeah.
reset. You want to try something else?
Well, what about planting trees? That would trees suck out carbon, so
That's
that would
right.
be better.
Right, and I can do that by saying afforestation, planting new trees. Deforestation is cutting down the rate at which we cut down trees, but afforestation, let's do that. That didn't do anything over here with where the energy is coming from, because it doesn't really matter. That's not really dependent on that. But on the temperature side, it's cut down the temperature from 1/10 of a degree, from 3.6 to 3.5 again. Still not enough, but better than nothing, right? What? Anything else?
We still maybe maybe renewables. Maybe that would, like
Yeah.
it would do something to our energy.
Sure. Okay. So here we are. Ready? Let's move the renewables thing. Again, I could do a deep dive, but renewables are what? What are renewables?
So solar and hydro and wind turbines.
Yep. And tidal, right? All those things. So I can move this all the way over. Oh, that's great. The green line goes up. More renewables. But look what happens. It doesn't do as much as we might think for if it's by itself. I'm only doing one policy at a time. But look what happens to coal. Coal goes down. This is kind of complicated, but it starts going back up again. It's a rebound effect. So think of it this way. Everybody's making it easier and easier for people to go to solar and other renewables, wind and hydroelectric, and then they'll move away from coal, which is a big share of the market. But then all of a sudden, the coal will start going back up again because it gets so cheap, because when people stop buying coal, it gets cheaper. Then people start buying coal again because it's so cheap. So then it starts coming back up again. It's called a rebound effect in economics. All right. So you know where I'm going with this because you've been on those meetings with Senators King and Collins and Representative Pingree, right? Where do you think what do you think the big bang, it doesn't get us all the way there, but the biggest bang for our buck might be?
Carbon price.
Right. Okay, let's go take a look at it. So do you remember how this works? Remember the bill that's in there. There were about 10 different carbon pricing bills, but the one with the most co-sponsors, the Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act, started off at $15 a ton of carbon. It had 84 co-sponsors, quite a few. And it's going to go receive the initial price right away, let's say next year or this year. The final carbon price, remember, it's going to go up every year for the next 80 years, because that's what the model goes to, right? 2100 or 2021 to 2100, about 80 years. So that's, and it goes up $10 a year. So that's 80 years. $10 a year is 80 times 10.
800.
Plus the initial 15 is 815. And then the year to start achieving the final carbon price, we're just going to say that's going to be this year. And we're going to say it's going to take those 80 years to get all the way up there. So you can see on the right, this is the graph showing the carbon price. Whoops, slowly going up, 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 up. And look what happens. It does more than double anything else. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Yeah. So now
we
I can
really
go
should do that.
Yeah, we should. I'm going to talk about the bills that are there. And the good thing is President-elect Biden and a few other folks are really pushing for this now. And I'm just going to show you this. So what I did is I changed this around. Instead of temperature, I'm looking at where the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from. So this is it without any carbon price. This is business as usual. The gray is carbon dioxide, and it keeps on increasing, increasing, increasing. No good. So if I put that carbon fee on, the carbon price on, then by the end of the century, it's no longer even the predominant driver of climate change. It's now methane is that blue one. So let's try to get those down. If I kind of deal with methane, and that's like regulations or changing how we use the land or making sure that our natural gas pipelines are sealed up well, can move that all the way over. Oh, look at that one down nicely. Now we can talk about, well, maybe we can we're almost at that magic 2 degrees anyway. So I just want to make you feel good by getting there all the way there. So let's talk about, well, let's make our buildings more energy efficient, or I don't know, maybe let's say that we do invest in more soil, stealing some carbon into their agriculture and making it cost effective for farmers to do that, or and giving them money for doing that, or if there's a price on carbon that'll happen, go in this direction. Whoop, boom. Oh, look at that. We're underneath 2 degrees just by doing that. And then everything else after that, we get even that much lower. How do you like that?
I love it.
Good, good. It's a nice future. Okay, so there's so many nice things to think about, and the air will be cleaner, all this stuff. The big thing to be worried about, though, is if you put a price on carbon, who's that going to hurt? That's going to hurt the poorest people the most, right? Because they're the ones who have the least amount of money, and they don't have the biggest carbon footprints, but they're the ones who have to live paycheck, money. They don't have much money to pay for that stuff. So that's why we talk about this thing. So what to do with that money? The first thing you do is you put that gradually increasing price on carbon, and it makes the biggest difference. And then everything after that becomes that much more effective because there's no way for those other carbons to squirt out from the system in other ways. It's a virtue multiplier. It makes it that much better. So what to do with that money? Well, we take the money from where we charged it on the fossil fuel mine or whatever it might be. And then we give, the way that the bill works that we've talked about is 84 co-sponsors in the House, and it briefly has a Senate companion bill. We're working on that one too, bring it back again, is to bring all that money and give it back to all the people, which may seem strange. We could do other things with that money, but if you do that, it creates a thing where people have more money in order to switch where they're getting their energy from, or what's powering their cars, or to help them afford the transition. It creates a positive feedback loop, making it more and more virtuous for people to move away from carbon. So here's what that says. It says that within the first 12 years, it's going to reduce our carbon emissions by 40%. Or the other way of saying this, the Paris Protocol Accords, it's going to get us exceeding those Paris Protocol goals in the United States in 8 years. And it's going to save a bunch of lives. This actually went up from about 300,000 to now 400,000, just from people who no longer have asthma and other stuff that gets from dirty air of burning coal and oil and gas. That stuff will kind of go away because people don't want to put that in the air because it costs a lot of money and it'll save lives. That money given back to people will mean that people will get about $4,410 in the 10th year for a family of 4. And that money going back to people, look how happy these people are with their solar panels. That money going back to people will create lots of jobs because all of a sudden people have some money in their pockets, So that means $4,000 is quite a bit. So people can then pay for other things, and that in turn puts more money into the system wherever they live, and more workers can get new jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
So do us kids get money too?
Good question. You guys under 18, you get half a credit. So you get half as much as we do until your 18th birthday. Good question. Yeah. And this is what it looks like. Now, this is on average, but for folks who are the poorest folks do the best because that income is taxed to, and they're taxed at a low rate. So they end up doing the best. Their after-tax income does the best. And everybody on average breaks even till about 60 to 70% wealthy. And then the top 30%, they should be moved away from carbon pollution so they can afford this. And for almost everybody, it's less than 2% of their income, which is not that much, especially if you're making lots and lots of money up at the top. And there'll be people up there who they have the means to switch over and put on solar panels or to buy, do something more virtuous, insulate their houses or whatever it might be. This is a picture of Maine. Look at Maine does well, especially in the poorer interior parts of the state. Those people do almost 70 or more % of them benefit from the policy. And then the people where the money is, that's where most of the carbon pollution is coming from, is those wealthier places. So again, they should be moving in that direction. This helps them. This one's complicated, but it does the same kind of thing. This is kind of your average for each 20%. This is what people's carbon costs will be. And then after taxes what their dividend will be. So look at that, dividend check does pretty well for each one of these. And everyone pretty much breaks even. The top one is, even though that looks like a big gap, remember it's less than 2% of their income. I'm going to skip this one maybe, but this one just says that most people, when you think about carbon price, you know what you think about is like what?
Like gas.
Gas for your car, right? Or for your heat for your home, right? Or your electricity or whatever it might be. If you live in a place where they have fossil fuels create your electricity. Maine's good on that, but other places like West Virginia, not so much. Well, those spots are only these bottom two. That's gasoline for your car, and utilities is like heat and electricity. Those are the blue and light blue. So for everybody, no matter your income level, and this is, the richer you are, the more true this is, most of that carbon pricing comes out in stuff that you don't think about, like the carbon price, the carbon footprint of buying your cup of coffee or your juice or your packaging anything, or buying your clothes or whatever it might be. Any product you might buy is going to have some kind of carbon price associated with it. So even if I'm done with that dividend check and just keep on buying the same stuff and don't think about trying to cut down on my carbon footprint, which would be foolish, but even if I did that, I'm still having less of a carbon imprint on the world, because all the businesses around me, they're much more sensitive to wanting to make sure their carbon price goes down, or their carbon fee, they don't have to pay so much of it. So they're switching everything around me that pays me, that gives me my products and services, wants to move into a direction where they're not polluting the atmosphere. So guess where this is, it's worked all over the place. In fact, every place it's been tried, this carbon fee and dividend model has worked. My favorite example is where?
Canada.
Canada, British Columbia. It started at 12 years ago, or more than that, 15 years ago. No, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Okay, so anyways, their carbon fee has steadily increased, and their carbon pollution consumption has gone down, well, compared to the rest of Canada, has gone down faster, while their economy has done better, has outpaced the Canadian average. It's such a success that Prime Minister Trudeau adopted it as a default policy for the rest of Canada. It's beautiful. All the Canadians love it because they love having that dividend check and their carbon pollution is going down and everyone's being healthier. This is a map of the world of all the places in the world that have some sort of carbon price, or as one's coming. Look at this. We have the only spots, like, so there's Canada, the European Union, China. They're either doing it by themselves or as part of a region like Europe, right? There's Greece, where Mama's family is from, Canada, where my parents are from, even African countries. A lot of them are doing this. Even the Middle East, it exports carbon. So we are slow to this. So a lot of other places are doing this, but by joining this club, we won't have other countries penalize us for not having it. Like Europe has decided just recently that they're going to put a tariff on the United States products in a couple of years unless we adopt a carbon price. So that protects them from having cheaper goods from another country. So we're going to do the same thing as part of our bill, is making sure that American industries don't have to compete with other countries that don't have a carbon price. But 80% of our trade is done with countries that already have a carbon price. So we're behind on this one. Okay. Remember when we met with King, Collins, and Pingree and other, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the House?
Yeah.
We remember they said that Democrats, when they're explained this, we brought this polling with us, that 80% of Democrats think this is a good idea when it's explained to them. It's surprising. The great news is that Republicans, who've been a little bit slower to talk about climate, when it's for Republicans who are younger than 40 years old, 75% of them agree with this policy. It's almost the same thing, which is why those Republicans are talking to us, and they really like this, liking this idea more and more, and it's growing. So hopefully they'll be able to come on board and we'll get a real bill in the next couple of years. All right, economists study markets, and they disagree all the time. But this was published in the Wall Street Journal, but it showed that it's now 3560, I believe, U.S. economists who, from all kinds of different politics and ideology, all kinds of different ideas, thinking, they all agree that this is the most efficient way for us to move to a clean energy. It's the most important first step. And you can see there you are thanking Shelley Pingree when she became a co-sponsor. And we are all thanking Angus King last time we met him in person before COVID-19. This is us meeting with Susan Collins, right? So we got more meetings coming up in March. There'll be more in June. Then there'll be more in November. Keep your fingers crossed. Say a little prayer that we can convince them this time to do the right thing and implement this. This one's kind of a sad one, but over the past 100 years, this is where the countries have created carbon dioxide emissions. United States, #1, behind them, Europe, Russia, and China. Climate change deaths are now at 150,000 per year, and look where it's coming from. It's the countries that have the least to do with this.
So unfair.
It's pretty unfair. It's pretty unfair. So we should, the moral thing to do is do something about this. This is pictures of all these logos of places that have endorsed this. It's not an exhaustive list, but all kinds of different groups. And there's us meeting with Shelley Pingree again. She became the first main co-sponsor of the bill. She's going to do it again. Hopefully we'll bring Golden, King, and Collins on board. And this is us meeting outside of the Capitol building to have our picture taken. Citizens Climate Lobby, you know how many volunteers there are now?
No.
195,000. You are one of those. And it's growing all the time. We're going to get to 200,000 soon. Look at that. So, and then we have Professor Hansen said that he's the guy who first talked about climate change. And he said that that's super important. It's like one of the best things you can do is to work to try to get this carbon fee and dividend through. So we have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have independents, we have conservatives, libertarians, progressives, everybody's on board. So did that make sense?
Yeah.
So what do you do if you want to show people if you talk to your friends, and let's say if you're watching this video and you want to do something about it, the best thing to do is go to the name of the bill as occurred, the biggest bill. There was a bunch of them, but the one that has the most co-sponsors and does the most bipartisan co-sponsors is the Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act, which is shortened in the website as energyinnovationact.org. You can see how it works. You can see all the people there's how it works. You can see all the people who sponsored it, people who supported it, a lot of organizations and supporters. And then the last thing is how to endorse the bill. So since you're such a prominent individual, Thea, you can click on this and you can put your first name in here and write it all. It takes 20 seconds and nobody knows about it except for Senators King, Collins, and Representative Pingree, like where are the people who are your national lawmakers where you live. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so anything else you want to tell people?
I think that's it.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much for helping me explain to everybody.
You're welcome.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you too. Bye.